I'm Laurence Ion. I'm a steward of the deal flow working group at VitaDAO. We are funding longevity research and then incubating it and spinning it out into startups to advance the field. So I'm going to talk about why we have to fight aging, the degenerative disease that affects all of us, all of you, and about why DeSci is needed, a bit about VitaDAO's success in democratizing funding of longevity research and advancing it towards more startups for further investment, and about what is the end game. What is the natural evolution of a DAO, a highly aligned community with capacity for collective action like fighting aging. And if you crowdfund land, you get the definition of a network state. And you really get you're poised to really win the crusade against aging, mainly through regulatory innovation. So everyone says health is the most important thing. Well, I know a little bit about that. I was diagnosed with a rare disease when I was a baby, and all across my childhood, I've had many surgeries, so I know how it is to not have it. And you only realize when you don't have it how important it is. And most people only realize it when they are in a poor state of health, when they're old, and at that point it's too late to do anything about it if the industry is not already well-funded and advancing. So yeah, it's aging, it's natural, it's only part of life. I remember after my grandma died, I had this very vivid realization of like, oh shit, actually everyone around me, my parents are gonna die, I'm gonna die, and of course there's nothing to do about it, so I just put it out of my mind. It's a normal psychological coping mechanism. But wait a minute, cholera is natural, cancer is natural, so we can, instead of saying, oh, if we cure aging, we have all these concerns like overpopulation or immortal dictators, or it's only going to be for the rich or so on. Well, we could say the same, right? It's like saying London is full of people, it's growing exponentially, it's full of manure on the streets, and it was stinky. So instead of saying, let's mix back the clean water with the sewage and get cholera back, no, instead we use technology. We clean up the streets, find other solutions, and the same with everything else that nature has thrown at us. We have gone out and checked each one off the list, and so that's what technology is about. We're going to do the same thing for aging. So people used to gather around their children's deathbed, watching them being consumed by bacterial disease. Imagine if we would choose to not give them antibiotics. That would seem barbaric, right? So I think the same way, if you look, yes, life expectancy has increased exponentially over time, but it was mostly due to antibiotics, sanitization, immunization, and so on. And I think we look back at this age of no anti-aging therapies as the same barbaric, where we couldn't give our wise, elderly people these therapies, and we just watch them being consumed by aging from the inside. So imagine a world in which people are just becoming wiser, more effective, then they don't die off, but they're hundreds of years old and can remember the mistakes of the past and not repeat them. Imagine a world in which we are not distracted by getting to work, by getting that retirement nut, and so we have enough money to not be slowly growing frail or poor, but thinking about long-termism, right? Problems bigger than us, problems that might hit in 500 years, like developing the technology to steer meteors away from the Earth before they completely destroy it, like climate change. If you can imagine yourself being here in 100 years, then I think you would treat the planet differently. And the same about all the existential risks about AI safety and engineer pandemics through synbiotes and so on. But what about cancer? what if we cured cancer today? How much longer do you think people would live? How much would we extend lifespan? Does anyone have any idea? No, it would be about 2 to 3 years, because all of the diseases of aging go up exponentially with age. So if I asked you, how would you like to die? Quickly, of course. But then your family would be, or your loved ones would be hurt, right? Because they are just unexpected. But if you, so yeah, all of these diseases go up exponentially with age. A third of you will die of heart disease, a third of you of cancer, and the rest will be lucky to pick up some other good diseases here. And we're all going to be frail eventually. The current medicine paradigm keeps us healthy, keeps us in a poor state of health for longer. And there's no such thing as natural causes, dying healthily in your sleep. It's a contradiction. So the second option is suffer for a while in hospital beds for a decade maybe, so that your loved ones have time to digest and so on, but it's bad for you. And of course you spend most of the money, it's a waste. And this is economically unsustainable. We are spending trillions on sick care, and it's going to get much worse with an inverted pyramid. We already have more people over 65 than people under 5. And as these people grow older, actually most of the people, the young kids that would sustain the workforce are in the developing nations, and most of the old people are in the developed nations. So actually in some of these nations which actually are going down in population, you have an even more inverted pyramid. You can get to 10 to 1, like one young person that's in the workforce has to sustain 10 elderly sick people at this rate. So we cannot keep doing this. We have to keep people healthy, viable, and youthful, and in the workforce, extend the healthy part of life with maybe no limit. And so the third option is rage against the dying of the light. Do not go gently into that good night. So how can we ever fight aging? It's so complicated. Gerontologists have been trying to understand metabolism and intervene to slow down aging, but it's a gargantuan task. It's unfeasible until maybe we have a superintelligence. So we have better approaches, like the damage repair approach, of sort of not intervening in metabolism, not having to keep people in poor state of health when pathology is already there, which is the geriatrics approach, but rather fixing the damage from time to time, just like we do with cars. And we have some startups doing that, some of which we've funded as well from VitaDAO. The other approach, which has been getting a lot of buzz, it's like the most hype around it now, the cellular partial reprogramming, with all the top billionaires funding it, and yeah, VitaDAO also funded TurnBio, which I think is the best. Other approaches, lesser known, maybe the tissue replacement, especially for brain tissue, spearheaded by Jean Hébert at Einstein College of Medicine, and other approaches like hormonal rebalancing, and many others. So I'm going to also tell you about this highly aligned community for collective action, VitaDAO. The main premise is that drugs that target aging are the future of medicine. And we've seen this huge overlap between the crypto top key opinion leaders and longevity. You know, Balaji, Vitalik, actually one of the founding members of the Bitcoin network, Hal Finney, he's in cryonics now, he's a huge advocate, and many other billionaires and newly minted people and crypto bros. So VitaDAO is a decentralized collective incubating and funding longevity research projects before they're a startup usually. We are democratizing the advancement of and participation in longevity biotech. Imagine just 1 million people with $100 cannot, you cannot put $100 VC fund, you're not accredited. You cannot put it in startups. You're not accredited usually, right? So this is a way to fund research pretty much directly. You can also fund specific projects within VitaDAO. And yes, our mission is to extend human health and lifespan, not just lifespan, by advancing these therapeutics to market. And we can scale and deploy exponentially faster than traditional startups and VCs because we're open and permissionless. We have network effects with the token and could become a network state. So drug development has been focused on treating the effects instead of the cause of all chronic age-related diseases, which is aging itself. IP ownership has been stuck in the 20th century. You have to it's illiquid, it's difficult to transfer, there's a long horizon to exit, you have to call up people in business suits still. And the public and patients don't have real ownership in IP, there's not a liquid market around it, there's not price discovery. And valuable IP in universities is not investable until a startup is spun out. And of course, grants are very boring, top-down, bureaucratic, risk-averse. But there are a few dozen pharmacological interventions that can slow or reverse aging in animals. And we at VitaDAO incubate and fund the best research, holding IP on chain, enabling that liquidity and fractionalization and community, and then leverage all of that to really develop those assets, de-risking them for further investment by traditional funders such as angels and VCs. And we have an easy application process, quick funding decisions, and potential for regulatory innovation, which I'll talk about a bit. We have this circular funding model where we reinvest the proceeds and further research and can multiply our impact. We're about 1.5 years old. We funded a bunch of projects and deployed capital and grown our community. Some of the featured projects you can see here. If you want to go into each one, we can later. And also, apart from the core focus, we've also started a bunch of side projects and nonprofit initiatives to support the field as a whole. They have a prize to recognize advances in longevity, starting with a hypothesis prize we just closed last year of 20K, and some new prizes up on the website, so check it out if you want to submit. We've had funders such as Vitalik Buterin, partners as like Methuselah Foundation and Lifespan.io. And we've also had thousands of people funded through the Gitcoin longevity round that we spearheaded with quadratic funding, and where people can sort of vote with their wallets on which projects deserve more of the funding from people like Vitalik and so on, instead of him having to decide. And we've also started a fellowship, also funded mainly by the Gitcoin round with these funders, and also a hackathon that is happening right this week. So we launched in June 2021 with the fair auction where everyone bid up for the tokens and everyone got the same price, raised 5.1 million, and then in November we had the first institutional members come in with 3.1 million, including Pfizer Ventures. So pharma is getting into DeSci. And so what is a DAO in the limit? If you move to the next step. Well, I think it's a network state, an online community, startup society, cloud first, land last, but not land never. I recommend checking out the Network State book by Balaji Srinivasan, also one of our strategic contributors. And yeah, it's a lot ideologically aligned, but geographically decentralized. It becomes a network archipelago. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I'm going to try. Archipelago, with a capacity for collective action that crowdfunds territories. And I think the easiest to start would be a longevity one, because for us it's life and death. So we're willing to move, we're willing to take risks. And we need a clean slate. There's been many attempts with the charter cities / special economic zones such as Prospera, actually also of course Shenzhen and Dubai and so on. There's been seasteading attempts. There's been free state projects like with New Hampshire. Maybe Vancouver or Vermont would be, Vermont or, not Vancouver, Vermont or Wyoming, hi Todd, would be a better choice. And also ideas around taking a country public, such as Palau, which has only 15,000 people. And of course, the ideas put forth by Balaji with network archipelago, such as kind of like embassies, right, where you have distributed pieces of like little islands within the current territories. Aging is, I think, the biggest problem right now. It's 100% that we all die from aging. 110,000 people die every day, 44 million per year, hundreds of millions of people in pain right now from aging. And that kind of comes to 1 second, 1 life. Every second, someone dies. So I started out wanting to have an impact in the field, but thinking it would be hard and boring. It's biotech, it's slow, it's pharma. But then I realized it's feasible. And then as I realized it's feasible, but what if we're going to be the last to die, last generation, last person even, right? So one day might actually make a huge difference in whether you make it across the chasm or not. And also I realized it's actually really fun. It's intellectually stimulating. It's very much exciting. So we're not talking here about immortality, like getting a magic pill that makes you live forever. The point is that you could have drugs that extend your lifespan 10, 20 years, and then in those 10, 20 years you have more technological progress and new therapeutics that extend it even more and more, and then eventually you're kind of home free. And so you have two options. You can work on aging, or you can work on another random fun side project. But if you work on aging, then you can work on another one. Otherwise, I'm sorry. And then another one, option one, I think is better. So I'd love it if you could join us in this crusade. Imagine a world in which people who are looking at sustainability can really believe and feel that they will be part of this earth for hundreds of years. How that's going to affect how we care for this earth and each other. And if not for rational reasons, think about romance. Right now it kind of involves marriage. You get together with someone, you have a great time for a while, then one of you gets sick, degenerate, dies, you're left alone with like trauma. And then imagine a world that's forever. Imagine you can say, I love you forever, and actually believe it. So yeah, join VitaDAO, I would say. They're open and permissionless, and you can join. If you're a researcher, apply for funding. If you're an entrepreneur or you want to get help build startups, help us spin out companies, we're looking for the best people and are willing to pay a lot for that. And if you want to try out an in-person network state experiment with a few hundred people maybe, soon, go to this link and apply. So thank you. If you have any questions, well, I'm also going to be at the booth, the VitaDAO booth at the end of the room, and we can sort of go into concerns that you have about longevity and many topics, many Q&A. But yeah, if you have any questions right now that come up, let me know.
Hi, yes, sorry, I'm setting you up here, but you talked about the optimistic outlook of longevity. Obviously, there's concerns that some of those outcomes might not be positive. Is there kind of a discussion, an ongoing debate around longevity ethics?
Yes, definitely. There's a lot of philosophical aspects, and I'm also involved with Jellyfish DAO, where we fund movies about showing longevity in a positive light so that we can inspire people how a world, because all the stories we've had from the earliest stories we can remember, right, about the Fountain of Youth, about Picture of Dorian Gray, it's always been some dystopian thing. There's always a reason why you shouldn't pursue it. The same with Icarus, right? Like pursuing flying. He flew too close to the sun. He got his wings burnt too high and fell and died, right? But now we fly every day. And the same with these stories. I think we need new stories, new possibilities. And I have not yet seen any argument for how there would be something much worse than what we have currently today with all these millions of people suffering and dying, and how any sort of concern people have would be much worse than that. But yeah, I've been doing this for a long time. I'd love to hear some new arguments, and I'll be open to any of those questions. Yeah.
You should watch Altered Carbon.
I have watched. It's all introduced scarcity because it's like more exciting, right?
Yeah.
But it can be way more exciting to make a movie showing the positive aspects. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
So stop believing those stories.
Are there any other questions?
Icarus.
Don't be shy. Any questions? No? Okay, well, thank you so much, Laurence. That was fascinating. Oh, we have one here. Do we have one?
Yeah, I was just going to ask about some example projects that Vita has helped fund.
Yes. Yeah. So I had some slides.
Slide, but you moved quite fast.
Yeah. So because you're interested, yeah, Rubedo is a startup working on prodrugs for pathogenic cells, not just senescent cells, which are sort of these cells that are old and not replicating anymore, but all kinds of pathogenic cells, including cancer cells and so on. So prodrugs are like smart drugs. They only get activated. They have these sugars on top, and they get activated in only the types of cells you want. The Korolchuk lab, it was an academic project, an IP-NFT we funded, and we have some great results. It's been about a year, I think, since we funded that, and would be sort of ready for spinning out a company. It is looking for autophagy activating molecules. TurnBio, one of the most exciting things going on right now, the cellular reprogramming approach, especially going after dermatology. It's injecting these genes, the Yamanaka transcription factors, and we just the past week we've seen papers coming out showing in vivo, in mice, rejuvenation using this exact approach, which TurnBio has been the first one, I think, to do, where these mice were injected when they were like almost 77 years old for a human, so like very late, with a few weeks to live, and they doubled the remaining lifespan. So you can show that, yes, you can have an old person and rejuvenate, well, an old mouse and rejuvenate that mouse, but you can do it safely, because for 10 years it's been a very, so the science is sort of solved, right? But the engineering aspects of like how you deliver it safely without getting teratomas, without turning into a blob of embryonic cells. So these Yamanaka factors basically just make your cells younger, more towards stem cells, right? But you can do it partially, and that's the key word, transient, as TurnBio says it. And with that, you promote rejuvenation across many tissues. And of course, the papers right now are not exactly fully. I mean, they've not transfected with these delivery methods all the body and so on. So I think if you just keep developing this technology and really hit every tissue, then you can have much higher lifespan increases, and especially if you give it earlier, not when the animals are about to die.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Laurence.